Have you ever felt like you couldn't get ahead with your money? Even as your income increased, you still felt behind and that you just couldn't save as much as you wanted to. Today, I'm going to share the budget of a real couple making $500,000 that feels exactly this way. They feel like they're just hanging on. CNBC actually shared this initial story and this couple's budget a couple of years ago, and the reaction was intense. Some people felt like it was ridiculous for this couple to be complaining that they were making $500,000, but they couldn't get by. Some people were saying that it was their own fault for living in a high cost of living area like New York, or that they took on such a high debt payment on their home. I'm not here to judge any of that. I want to use this as an example of how you can think about your cash flow and personal situation. Share a good tool to visualize where your money's going and a framework for thinking about your cash flow and your personal finances that can help you make progress today. Now, this budget is a couple years old. 401k contribution limits have increased, costs have gone up as we've all felt, and the numbers might not be exactly the same today, but I'm still going to use them as is. Also, some of the numbers could be slightly debatable. You know, they put down a 40% effective tax rate. Is that potentially a little bit high when you add in some of their deductions? Maybe. Again, I'm not going to critique it or say, hey, they're spending too much here, or this number's wrong, it really is this or that. I just want to use this again as a good overview for you to think about your money. No matter what your income is, if you feel like this couple, there are 4 good steps you can take today to make progress. The first step is to understand what you actually spend, be honest, and write it down, and have a good annual estimate of how much money you spend. This couple already did that. They put down their budget, they wrote out everything that they expect to spend in a year, and now we're able to look at that and have a good framework to start with. Whether you write this down by hand, whether you use Excel, or you want to use an app to give yourself a head start, find whatever's the best place for you to start. Just get these numbers written down. Step 2 is to categorize. Now you want to put these numbers into different categories. There's a number of different ways people like to do this. Some do it on discretionary versus non-discretionary. Some do it on fixed versus variable expenses. You might want to do a needs, wants, and wishes category. Everybody's a little bit different. For today, I broke their expenses down into 4 major categories just to keep it simple. And I also created a visual that I would walk them through so that they can understand where their actual money is going, because I'm a big believer in show me where you're spending your money and I'll show you where your priorities are. So if we look at these 4 categories, we have taxes, we have living expenses, debt payments, and savings. Again, you can choose the way and the method and the categorization that works for you, but I think this is a good framework. So if we look through where their cash flow is going, they both earn $250,000. They're 35 years old each, and they're living in New York City. So they have $500,000 of total funds coming in. Now what I did was I broke this down into where the money is flowing most. They had just over $185,000 going to taxes, broken up between federal, state and city taxes, FICA, extra Medicare surcharges based on their high income level. Then they have living expenses here. So just over $169,000 going into their broad picture living expenses. For that, once again, I think it's helpful for you to make a visual and put where the money's going most at the top. So you can really see this almost waterfall effect, again, showing priorities. Not to judge your priorities, everybody's different with their goals, short-term and long-term, but just to understand where's my money going and where's most of it going. Oftentimes people stress out too much about small dollar items. You don't need to stress as much about the small dollar items. It's these big ticket items, these really big costs and ongoing expenses that hurt our personal finances and make us feel like we are never going to be able to get ahead or get out from underneath this. So if you look at their living expenses, their largest ongoing living expense is $42,000. That's childcare. That's a very expensive cost, right? Living in New York City, these two are 35, 2 young kids that are under 6. They're both in law. You then have food, then property taxes, vacations. They're taking 3 vacations a year. We can't ignore that. That's $18,000 right there. They are very charitable as well, $18,000 going to charity. And you can see it goes down as well. Again, kids, lessons, academics, clothing, home insurance, etc. So that's their living expenses categorized there. Then you've got another bucket, which I put debt payments, right? So they have over $100,000 in ongoing debt payments. When you look at your personal expenses, things do vary over time. So certain debt payments will oftentimes be paid off, and now they're removed from our personal expenses. So our overall expenses can certainly fluctuate. As well, though, there is often a trend where sometimes as soon as one debt is gone and paid off, you just pick up a new debt, right? We maybe get a new car, maybe we refinance our house, etc. Here's their debt payments that make up their $100,000. They have 60 going to their mortgage. They got a $1.5 million condo in New York City. They have $60,000 in principal and interest each year. That's a big number. However, they are as well in a high cost of living area. So sometimes in certain cities, there's only so much variability you have in terms of what is that home going to cost if you want to own a home. Now, again, not getting into a debate on is this too much, too little. I just want to show you a good way to categorize your spending. They still have student loans, and then as well they have car payments. They have 2 new leases on cars that they've got. Now this fourth category is their savings. What are they actually saving? Currently they were putting in, at the time, maxing out their 401k, which was $18,000 a year, both of them. So their fixed saving was $36,000 tax deferred. And then once all of this was said and done, the way they broke it down and what CNBC shared was they basically had this unallocated income of $7,300 a year. So again, this was still being saved. It would go into just a brokerage account or their checking account. But because of this, they felt like they were just barely getting by, even though they're making $500,000. So again, we can all look at some of these expenses and potentially pick apart some things where, hey, here's where you can save money right away. Here's some things that you can change to improve this cash flow. Again, that's not the point of right now, but I think this is a great way for you to categorize your money. This visual is called the Sankey diagram. You can look these up, and there's some ways you can have just Excel templates export to this visual, but I think it's such a great way. I've spoken to hundreds of people about their money and their cash flow, and many people respond well to a visual as opposed to just looking at this in-depth spreadsheet or Excel or handwritten notes. Getting some visual, categorizing it by where's my money flowing from the biggest to the least amount of expense, and you can really see, okay, what are my family's priorities? Do I like this? Do I disagree with this? Am I not really spending money on the things that make me happy? Or am I really sacrificing my future self by spending too much on the things that make me short-term happy right now? With that, you can now move on to step 3, which is to understand what percent of your income is going to each category and pick a target that matches your priorities. Again, this could be variable depending on your age, your income level, and your short and long-term goals, but this is a great next step to take. I've now broken this couple's expenses down again now into these 4 categories and showing you what percentage of their income is made up of these categories. So I like to think about personal finances like health. Imagine you go to the doctor and the doctor can do some benchmarks and vital signs. They might understand your blood pressure. They might take glucose measurements. They want to know your sleep and your resting heart rate variability, all these important topics, and they can get a good benchmark of where you stand today and help you look at what might be the next best step. We have the same thing with our personal finances. We have these financial vital signs that show us where we stand. And when you break your income and expenses down into these categories, you can get a really good understanding of where you stand and what might need attention. So here I've broken down this couple's finances into some financial vitals to get a big picture look at where they are and talk about benchmarks. So this middle category here is all about their cash flow. And I've taken that previous diagram now, and now we're breaking it out into a percentage. So we see that your money can really only flow to 4 different categories when you have your income. You can save it, so a savings rate, looking at what percentage of your income is going to savings. You can spend it, so just personal spending. I've called it burn rate here, just what money is going to fund your lifestyle, the things that make you happy, trips, vacation, childcare, whatever it might be. You can then pay down debt with it, or you can pay taxes with it. When you look at your money, it's really that simple. Those are the 4 areas that your money is going to flow to. So it's really helpful to categorize them and track where they are, because it's really hard to make improvement. It's really hard to plan a trip on any destination if you don't know where you're starting from. Understanding where you start from is really important. So here's where this couple is starting from. Only 9% of their gross income is going to savings. Now, a good target, a healthy range would be about 10 to 20%. Everybody's different, but when you start benchmarking this based off of their personal situation, what seems to be their goals and their priorities, as well as their income level, this is a low number. Anybody making over 500,000, you'd ideally see the high range. 20% or above would be more of a healthy range, because again, a good benchmark is going to be personalized to you. Yes, you want to understand big picture what makes sense, but a 9% savings rate is a really low savings rate for this couple at their income. when they think long term, how are they going to replace their income one day? How will they reach financial independence? They're going to need to save way more than this if they truly want to replace their expenses. Or they'll have to have a heart-to-heart conversation and figure out how are they going to reduce their expenses, because financial independence is a really simple metric. It's all about how big is your net worth compared to how much are you spending. When you have a substantial net worth compared to your spending, you're financially independent. Now those numbers fluctuate, they vary over time, but just knowing you want to have a certain amount of your net worth to cover your expenses is helpful. And this couple, even though they're saving, they both max out their 401ks, when you compare that to how much they spend, a savings rate of about 10%, it will take you about 51 years to truly be financially independent. Of course, there's some assumptions baked in there, but if this couple was to sit back and think, oh, it's going to take us 51 years of working this exact way, feeling this stressed about money, only to get to financial independence in our mid-80s, they might want to take a look again at where their money's going and shift around some of the cash flow to really make sure it matches up with their priorities. Everybody's different. They spend a lot on childcare, they're spending a lot on kids' education. That could be just what they want to do, that's important to them. That's more important than retiring a couple of years earlier. But at least make the decision from an informed place as you look at your cash flow, figure out if it matches up, take a look at your savings rate, how much is it? Then take a look at your burn rate, so your personal spending, how much of that category of it makes up your gross income, and see what makes sense for that. Their personal spending, their burn rate in the mid 30% is a healthy level. Then take a look at your debt. What is your debt to income? This is a number that's so important when it comes to buying homes or getting loans, but we don't really think about it much beyond that. But really think about how much of your income is going towards paying down debt. This couple being 20%, this is a little bit towards the higher end of that range that you'd want to see. Everybody's different though. There's no denying that a lot of people are in the 30 to 40% range. But again, oftentimes the debt payments are the things that make you stressed. It's that money you must pay no matter what goes on in your life. And I would worry about this couple's expenses if one of them loses a job or they get burnt out in a very stressful, demanding career. Do they have the flexibility to shift? Do they have the flexibility to go to a one income, which is still $250,000 of income? Right now they don't. They don't have that flexibility, so that's just going to add to the stress they have. And then you've got your tax rate. Their effective tax rate when you add all of their taxes together is 40%. Now again, that's the tricky part. As your income goes up, taxes will make up a larger portion of your income. So they should be doing everything they can for tax planning to look at, are they taking advantage of every possible vehicle to save on taxes, whether that be short-term or whether that be long-term strategies. Now, once you have a good framework for this, now again, you can move on to step 4, which is to monitor this. I mentioned before, it's really tough to make a plan for where you're going if you don't know where you're starting from. Now this couple has a good starting point. They know roughly where their money is flowing. Now they can set a good goal and good targets, and they can monitor from now on. So it's a good idea to check in on your finances on these categories. Certain things might be a quarterly basis, some might be an annual basis, and just see, are you making progress the way you want? Have you made any sort of changes along the way? Again, thinking about going to your doctor, if every time you go in you have these benchmarks measured, these objective and standardized measurements, you can see, hey, where was I? Am I on the right track? Am I making improvements at a real high level without having to get too much in the detail? So once you have this, now you can start monitoring to go, okay, am I making the right decisions? Am I making progress towards my goals? I hope you found this framework for thinking about your cash flow helpful. If so, please hit the subscribe button. You can get notified of our weekly videos when they're released. And let me know if you have any questions in the comments about your cash flow. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Peter Campbell, the lead advisor at Bull Oak. We're an independent financial planning firm based in San Diego. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about how we work with our clients, check us out at bulloak.com. Thanks.